Dun, 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 dun. I don't know why I have the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies in my head, but you've just been subjected to it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another installment, this week's installment of Disorganized Play. I'm your host. I'm your Dungeon Master. I am your GM. I am your Master of Ceremonies. I am your Royal Highness, Tom Lommel. And I want to thank you for joining me. I apologize at the end of the stream. Last week on Thursday we got cut off. I don't know, my internet had a quick hiccup, and then it gets weird where you restart the stream and you start another video on YouTube and it all gets a little mushy. So I believe Texas Devon, or one of our other chat room regulars, asked something about streaming for RPGs on Twitch and how you prep differently. We will tackle that on Thursday in our typical Q&A session, our recap show. So today we have a few things to talk about. Hello everyone. It is time for Broadway Tom Lommel. It is a great day to be alive. Yesterday I ran around like a madman and did a ton of different things, including Monday Night Dungeon Fight. I hope you tuned in. It was a spectacular session of Monday Night Dungeon Fight. So, with that in mind, let's get into the business of the Dungeons and the Dragons. Our recap of last session: they picked up the fight in the Poisoner's Lair. They almost all got murdered because the Bard was gone for the week. He was off on a camping trip or something. What else happened? I killed, I killed, as if I was in charge. Actually, the dice killed the rogue fighter in the group. It was a hard-fought battle. Both sides really had a tough, I mean, I don't know, both sides. Again, it sounds like I'm cheering for the NPCs. I'm not. I just want it to be a challenging fight. I was prepared for, like, I was making the contingency in my mind when 3 of the 5 guys were down. Like, okay, do we start taking prisoners at this point? Is that the next thing that's going to happen? Because we were pretty close. There were 3 Duergar on 2 NPCs, and until they dogpiled the 2 of them, they dogpiled one and they dogpiled the priest, and that was the turning point. So it was tough. They found a letter from apparently a Cult of the Dragon cultist informing the Poisoner. This was the Poisoner's Lair. We looked at that map last week. Let's take another look at it again. Here it is. Yeah. I really need to organize the layers in my setup here a little bit better. So, they found this letter from a Cult of the Dragon cultist to the person who's running this complex saying, hey, I'm sorry that we haven't been paying you, we owe you back, we owe you back pay, keep this guy under wraps, we're going to get some good money for him. Supposedly he's royalty. That's just a seed that I chummed out there. I don't know whether Jorgen / Harshnag is going to turn out to be royalty or not, but it is, it's not unusual for people to be completely misinformed about who they think who they think this dude is or whatever. So that was an interesting detail. The letter really drops the fact that his axe was sold to an anonymous buyer in Citadel Felbar, that they didn't want to sell it in Waterdeep because it would have attracted too much attention. That was the main thing that came out of that little piece of clue bait, if you want to call it that. And they found some magic items. So they found a +1 longsword that they, to this day, here almost a week later, are still arguing about who wants to take it. An interesting problem to have with magic items. I don't want the +1 longsword. Does anyone want the +1 longsword? You have no other magic weapons in the party, guys. Does someone want to bite the bullet? I know it's not the short sword that you had your heart set on, but maybe you could bite the bullet and take the thing called Goblin Render, because it's a cool named weapon, and it sounds cool, and it's magic. Someone will end up getting it. I don't know who that's going to be. That's whatever. As is often the case in Adventurers League, magic items become really the one sore point of contention in the entire game, where because you have this playing card of Well, I have fewer magic items than you, so I get the next thing. So two things tend to happen. Number one, everybody kind of sits and waits until something good comes along. And really, like, that's kind of the main thing. And then you will see people pass stuff up that's appropriate for their character because they're hoping something better will come along. So it's a weird situation. I don't know. It because Adventures League is regulated, that it gets a little weird, right? I prefer my home game where they can just like figure it out. Or you know what? I can change the magic item to be the +1 short sword instead of the +1 long sword, and it'll still be called Goblin Under, and it'll still be cool. So that's the short version of what happened in last week's session. If you want the half-an-hour version, you can go back to YouTube and watch last Thursday's little get-together chit-chat when I have an entire recap show dedicated to this stuff. So where does that leave us? Let's talk about where that leaves us, because that's really the purpose of the recap, is what was left on our to-do list, what's left on our adventurer's agenda. Let's adventure more like a well-run corporation and less like a bunch of 14-year-olds. The things that are still open, they need to deliver this message to Harshnag, and this is where we get into how I would suggest you prep, right? If it hasn't become clear over the course of the past 6 prep sessions or whatever it has been, what I recommend is you get yourself a little stack of index cards, and we've talked about this, but I just want to cover it again. And you just write down, okay, what are open items? What are anticipated beats? You're going to see that on our agenda thing. What are our anticipated beats? But so things that this is just a good place to start building that list, right? They haven't delivered the news to Harshnag, or Jorgen, as I have been calling him. That's important because Jorgen is going to be motivated to go to Citadel Felbar and figure out what the F happened to his awesome, awesome axe. Perfectly reasonable, perfectly legitimate. Question being, do we want to send the party along with him, or does he want to enlist the party to go there on his behalf? Which, and if it's a Frost Giant and it's his prized possession, probably not. He probably wants to be somewhere close. But there's also an argument to be made, if he shows up, then whatever Cult of the Dragon forces are in that area are going to be alerted, like, oh, shit, Jorgen's back, and he's mad. This could be, we need help. Bring us help. So that's one unattended item of business. They had already found the 2 casks of ale, so really the only other open agenda item on our list of hooks that are hanging out there for things for them to do is that the Nightstone disappeared, and they know that there's another one in Triboar. I established that in an earlier session, right? We're sort of into our hooks into Chapter 2 here. Finally, Morak has some quests that he can give. And for that matter, we could tie this into... So I'm working under the assumption that my party is in league with the Zentarum. About half the party is Harpers. They've been given the task of infiltrating the Black Network and essentially being moles inside the Black Network. Whether the other Zents are aware of that or not is, I mean, that's a metagame consideration we'll have to tackle at some point, like if that actually gets brought into the game. But what this does for us is we can give quests from Charlton Helmstar, who's ostensibly the guy who's auditioning for them for this caravan duty job. He's a fence in Waterdeep, and he's, you know, well connected into the Black Network, and he's sort of testing them out to see if they're trustworthy. We've already tipped our hat that Morak is in the Black Network. We've tipped our hat that Kella Darkhope is in the Black Network. So we have a lot of Zent contacts who could essentially, like, order them to go do stuff. So that's another piece of business where we can pick up and have more access. Well, while you're going to Triboar, can you go talk to, I have to look up the guy's name, but there's a Zent contact in Triboar. So those are kind of our dangling hooks. They could potentially follow the path of Jorgen, go to Citadel Felbar and try and track down his ex. I don't think that's important. So let me address a couple of questions here and also get rid of this map, right? We're done looking at the Poisoner's Lair. If you want those, as Farquaad points out in the chat, you can go to the saving throw folder for Disorganized Play, and this map is free for you. It is free for you. Enjoy. So we're gonna tackle a couple of questions that came up here in the chat quick, since there's some questions about what's been going on. So, if they argue, Xenar Faith asks, if they argue too much about items, what do you do? Do you make it cursed, stolen? Do you go for a coffee? I can't make it cursed. That's not something I'm allowed to do in Adventurers League. And honestly, this is largely an Adventurers League problem, although I will see this pop up in just a home game where you hand out an item that you think is cool. Hey, there are these awesome, like, night vision goggles or whatever, dark vision, eyes of dark vision, or whatever you want to call it, and the character goes, yeah, all right, well, that solves that problem. And, like, it's not powerful enough for them or whatever. That's always, that's tough, where you think that you've got a good card to play on the table here, and you're going to hand out something, a little tasty treat for them that they'll be grateful for, and it does not end up being the reward that you anticipated. And honestly, like, so if we look at the player mechanisms for Dungeons and Dragons, it is a carrot and it is a Pavlovian response of, press the XP lever and treasure comes out, and if they don't like the treasure, you kind of feel like you haven't done half your job as a DM, right? In some respects. So I don't make it cursed or stolen. Honestly, in Adventurers League, I'm just like, who wants to take it? Otherwise, someone, one of the NPCs will take it off your hands. Nobody has to have it. If you don't want the magic item, nobody has to have it. That's fine. And we've seen that. I've seen that in previous seasons where nobody at the table is interested in this thing. Part of the problem being that once you accumulate magic items in Adventurers League, you cannot get rid of them. They're tied to your sheet. And so if you walk into a convention game and you have 3 magic items, but one of them is kind of crappy, you are now at a disadvantage if a cool thing comes up in the adventure that you play and you've got 3 magic items and everybody else has 2. You're like, I wish I didn't have that ring of water walking. Who gives? Oh, you can't destroy it. Even if you were to write on your sheet, like, I threw this thing into the great volcano and sacrificed to my dark gods, never to harness its eldritch energies again, it still counts as a magic item slot, even if you choose to destroy it. I know this because I've asked about it. It's annoying. And that's where you get into this sort of situation where people will pass this stuff up because they want something better. They don't want to have magic items that are frivolous. They want, Adventurers League is admittedly a different type of RPG experience, or a distinctive type of RPG experience, because you have so little wiggle room on your character that everybody min-maxes. Not everybody, but there's a tendency, there's an incentive to min-max your character as hard as possible. You can't roll stats, you can't roll hit points, you have a hard time trading magic items. You can do it, but you have a hard time doing it. You can't just do it at your local game shop. So people really get precious about the things that they can control, and that tends to be magic items, feats, that sort of class levels, that sort of thing. Those things all take on enormously more weight than they normally do in the average game. Layers of Fear was on earlier. It is not an espionage type campaign yet. The question was, because the Harpers are trying to... I updated the name of the stream. Did it not get... It's updated on my screen. All right. Sorry, I'm just getting lost in the comments here. Is it an espionage type campaign? Not explicitly, no. That is just something that I've been using to make sure that I can keep the quest lines tied together, that I can make sure that there's a coherent reason for everyone to be working together towards the same goal, even though the Harpers and the Zents ostensibly do not like each other and do not have a great reason for working together. There was enough like wink wink, like are you a Zent, wink wink type of stuff going on, that it was stretching the bounds of credibility for there to be 3 Harpers in the group and then them to just not be doing anything about running into all of these Zent people. So I wanted to address that because I felt like it was getting it was coming up as a theme in our campaign, and it needed to be addressed. Why are these Harpers all ignoring all of this? Essentially, they weren't doing anything outright illegal, but they were all tipping their hands like, I'm a Zent, yep, yeah, I've got a friend on the inside, all that kind of stuff. So that's why that's why I've chosen to address things in that way. I am not planning to play intra-party intrigue or conflict out in any material way. That's another thing that's against AL League rules, is players can't attack each other. They can kind of mess with each other, but they can't openly attack each other. And I don't want to start that sort of situation. I don't want to get involved in that kind of situation. That's a very specific type of game. Everybody has to be signed up on board before you go off and run that type of game of potential secrets and backstabbing, cloak and dagger type of stuff. You need to know that everybody at the table is prepared for the fact that their friend is going to betray them, or the alliance that they've made, or even the fact that they're going to make alliances and expected to have favors and stuff like that. And honestly, I think it's really tough to run that kind of campaign without it getting personal. You're sort of running a role-playing games version of diplomacy, and it's not the way the game was designed, so you have to take extra care to facilitate that style of campaign. So, Adventurers League is fun. All right, so let me back up and be clear about the fact that I don't like some of the strictures. I don't like some of the rigidity of the rules, because for decades I've just played however I want, and I'm very much an improvisational DM, if you guys have not already learned that from listening to the recaps of how things did not work or what I decided to change at the last minute, as evidenced 2 sessions ago. But the point being, I'm used to very freeform. It's my game. I get to do what I want. And Adventurers League puts rules around that so that people don't cheat, fudge their characters, add on a bunch of magic items, change their stats, do stuff where then they walk into a convention game at another table and their character is massively overpowered for what's going on, right? So it's organized play. There are rules. They're there for a reason. I don't always agree with them. I'm not right about that. It's not. It's easy for me to sit back here in my kitchen and bag on, I don't like the way that this works, or I don't like the way that this works, but it doesn't fall on my shoulders to have to decide these types of things. So I get it's a tricky decision to make. They're trying to make not a complete, but they want to make an experience that is standardized across players, right? So that everybody knows what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how a person got whatever they got, and what's going on. So yeah, the appeal is, I will say, here's the appeal. Why did I even get involved in Adventures League? We're going off on a huge tangent here. That's fine. We'll catch up. Why did I get involved in Adventures League? Because number one, I wanted to play without having to start a whole other group and manage a bunch of different schedules and figure out who's going to DM. The great thing, the number one thing about Adventures League is you go to your local hobby shop and you say, I want to play Dungeons & Dragons on Wednesday, and they, if they have spots, will set you up with a game of Dungeons & Dragons. and you go, at our hobby shop, we have a nice space to play. We play for 4 hours. We play from 7 to 11. That's a great, like, perfect kind of session length. And it's a fairly comfortable atmosphere. And I don't, before I DM'd this season, I never had to worry about, like, what's the monster stats? Is everybody going to be able to make it? Blah blah blah. Like, none of that stuff. It was a show up and play experience. And if you don't have a solid home game to participate in, if you don't know of a group of friends who are playing, or you can't, find a way to feel out that invite or whatever, it is a terrific way for you to get involved at the tabletop, face-to-face game, and learn about what the hobby is about. It's not as loose as an informal, typically, as a home game. That's fine. It does tend to kind of have a push towards, I feel like I said, it has a push towards min-maxing, but you don't have to play that way. I don't know. I think if you were to go in and do a ton of frivolous role-playing, people would be like, you can't hog the spotlight that much, dude. Like, you got to work with us, and we're going to have a fight. Like, you can't talk your way out of everything, even if you try. So that's important. Like your play style still has to mesh with the group. It's not going to be super role play heavy, but role playing is encouraged. I mean, I as a DM enjoy it when we have role playing scenes or role playing opportunities, or a character does something role playing that's cool. So yeah, it's a way to get into the hobby without having a group of friends who's already into the hobby. And let's be honest, the number one way that people learn Dungeons and Dragons is by playing in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. That means you have to know somebody who knows how to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's very difficult to sit down, at least it was, in the 80s and 90s, it was very difficult to just sit down with a book and figure it out by yourself, especially if you're a kid, if you were like 12 or 13. You had to learn from somebody who knew how to play. Now we have actual play videos that will help you find your way through the system, but you'll still find yourself with rules holes and areas where your knowledge is completely lacking. So that is the advantage to Adventurers League, is you can go and part of the mission is to teach new people how to play the rules. So your ignorance will not be chided or looked down upon. Like, great, you're somebody new who's here to play. Let's get you up to speed. Is sort of the deal. So that's my quick take. Like, that's why I got involved, and I played 2 seasons or 2.5 seasons. I don't remember exactly what it was. I played Elemental Evil. I played Out of the Abyss. I might have played part of Horde of the Dragon Queen, like half a season or something like that. So I played about 2.5 seasons, and then I was like, it's time for me to give back and actually DM this thing, and that's how we got to where we are today. I think, ideally the mission of Adventurers League is for people to come together and play D&D and then spin off and form their own home groups or whatever. So I think that's the ultimate goal, is to educate people in the hobby, have a good time, and encourage new groups to form. And that's a mission I believe in. So as much as I bag on, I don't like this rule, and I don't like changing this, and I know it. And admittedly, you're gaming with strangers. You might not like everybody at your table. That's fine. At the end of the season, scramble the tables, go someplace new, or grab 3 of your friends and say, I just learned how to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like, let's start another game. So there is my Adventurers League proselytizing. I do support the idea of organized play for RPGs, whether you play in Pathfinder Society or you play in AL or something else. I think it's helpful for growing the hobby, and that's an important thing to me. So we went a long way off the beaten path here. That's fine. All right, so hooks into Chapter 2. I feel like we've largely covered hooks into Chapter 2, which is Morak or Kella, or everyone else, can give some Zentrum quests. The other Nightstone that they know about, the other monolith they know about via information that Jorgen gave them, is in Tribawar. So they're probably going to go to Tribewar. They have incentive to go there. And they need to deliver the news to Jorgen about the whereabouts of his axe, or the last known whereabouts of his axe. So that's the only one that could get a little wiggly. Anticipated beats. What do we think is going to happen, say, next session? All right, we need to talk to Jorgen. That's one thing. And so ideally what I would do is each of these anticipated beats would be its own separate card. I'm just sketching this stuff out for now, but each would be its own separate card, and then on that card, I'd title it, and then I would put, like, okay, these are the pieces of information or possible actionable items that they could do in this particular beat or scene, whatever you want to call it. Beat, a scene, it's the same kind of thing. Technically it's not, but it might be more appropriate to say, in this scene, here are the information that they could find and or the things that they could do, possible outcomes. So talk to Jorgen. I think Jorgen is probably going to accompany them along the way, part of the journey. You know, I'm headed north, that's north. I can go to Tribewar and accompany you to Tribewar, but when you get there, I'm taking off. Like, I got to get to Citadel Felbar and figure out what's going on. Alternately, he could just say, you guys are holding me back. I'm taking off. I'm just going through the forest. I'm not scared of the elves in the Misty Forest or whatever it is. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the other side or whatever. So that needs to be dealt with. They need to... Is it a lot of stuff that I take to sessions? Sometimes, yes and no. I mean, the nice thing is these cards are, you know, the great thing about having each scene on a card is, okay, we're talking to Jorgen, boom, I flip, flip, flip. All right, and then I've got a little list of talking points or ideas, just ideas, that's all it is, little notes and ideas that I can take care of on, oh, okay, so that, yeah, you know, when they're dealing with Jorgen. Things that I want to make sure that I communicate, important. Yeah, also, the card's probably not full. I can also take notes on them if I so choose. The real issue with this system is you can lose these things. They can get into different, like, sometimes I have my regular messenger bag that I carry around with me day to day, and then I have my D&D bag, and notes flip back and forth, and keeping them organized is a pain in the butt. But I love taking notes on physical media. That's me. So that's the deal. They're going to talk to Jorgen. That's fine. They've got to talk to Jorgen. That's going to happen. He's going to want to know what happened to his axe. They're probably going to have a scene with Morak and or Kella saying, like, okay, so what do you do next? Now that you've helped us out, we really appreciate it. You know, you have plans to stick around. What are you going to do? At which point, I'm hoping, you know, there's also the conversation that you have that's not between the PCs and NPCs, right? There's also the framing conversation that I will have as the DM saying, what's your intention here, guys? What do you think you want to follow up on? What are your thoughts on where you want to go next? And have them talk out of character about, well, you know, okay, there's the stuff about Nightstone, there's the stuff about Citadel Felbar. Yeah, I've got some connections in Waterdeep. We could go back there and then go to Waterdeep and see if we could dig up some information. And the nice thing about talking about this out of character is I can sit there and process this as the DM kind of in real time without having to worry about, like, how a particular NPC is going to respond to this or whatever. So you let them kind of brainstorm a little bit, and then as the DM, you can reframe, reshape some of the ideas as they spin them out. Well, you know, well, there's that thing. I don't know. Do we want to go check out this other monolith? Well, your alternative, if you want to find out what happened to the monolith from Nightstone, would be to track down the Cloud Castle. But the Cloud Castle is, with the Cloud Giants, is now a week away. It could be in literally any direction. You're going to have a hard time finding that thing. I don't know. That's an acceptable goal, but unfortunately, it's going to be difficult to achieve. So we can work on that if that's something you want to pursue, but that is not the easiest path to pursue if that's something you want to do. So you're going to have to come up with some solid ideas of how you want to track down that castle if that's your next intended act, right? So that's a helpful. It's not really a scene. It's just, it's not a scene. It's not a beat. It's not a part of the story. It's you as the plot administrator bringing the pieces of knowledge that the players have into focus. Because let's be honest, I've dropped hints about different things. Really big jet just went over my house. I have dropped hints about things over the last 4 sessions, right? So that's a month ago. I do not blame them. I don't see people taking notes. If we have a recap, people kind of have a verbal recap. I don't think they're writing stuff down. I have mixed feelings about that. When I played AL, I liked to write stuff down just so that I could stay engaged in the game, keep track of what was going on. I had a journal I could look back on because I know that these books set stuff up in chapter 2 that then pays off in chapter 8, and you're like, oh yeah, what was the name of that guy that we talked to? Oh yeah, it was Morak, right? Yeah, what? Morak's sister shows up. So it always makes the DM happier when the players can pull that information out of somewhere. What was the name of that guy? There was that priest that we talked to. He was a priest of Lathander. And they flip. So I prefer it when people write stuff down, but they don't always do it, right? If they don't do it, then it falls on you as the DM to kind of burnish some of the information that they've gotten so that they have a clearer idea of what the intended plot is, or what the plot is that you are intending to pursue, or you intend to help them pursue, right? So, as much as we talk about D&D as this freeform game where you can literally do anything, that's true. That means you can also do literally anything badly, right? So, that's the other part of this sort of prep thing, is thinking about having a moment in the session where you, as the facilitator of the story, sit down and say, all right, where do you think we're at, and where do you think you want to go next? What do you think is going to happen? Just out of character, let's have a discussion amongst the party, because honestly, like, you would have, like, okay, at the campfire that night, the players talk, the party talks and discusses the things they've discovered and where they think they should go next, right? You didn't necessarily have to turn that into a role-playing scene. Let the players bat the stuff around, burnish the ideas that are bring into focus the ideas that deserve being highlighted in your opinion. And the other thing I would say is be open to the idea that they're going to do stuff that you didn't anticipate, and that's not necessarily a bad idea. In a published adventure like this, you sometimes have to bend what they think. Like, they thought Morak was a Zent. He's not in the book. He's not a Zent. I just went with it. That's a decision I made. That's pursuing the story in the direction that they want the story to go. They want this story to clearly, like, the Black Network has spies everywhere. Great, okay, perfect. That's now being set up. That's become a theme of the campaign. If you have read or played Dungeon World, but particularly if you've read the GMing advice in Dungeon World, they'll talk about how players are going to show you the game that they want to play, and don't plan your campaign out for 4 months. Rather, throw some chum in the water and see what they bite on, and then build your campaign around that. So the other thing that you need to consider is sometimes the players have a misconception about some piece of information that they gathered, or something that they discovered, or they just misinterpreted the way 2 NPCs interacted, or an event that transpired, or whatever. But the bottom line is they're going to get stuff wrong. Your choice, piggybacking off of what I just said, is you can either pick up and this wrong idea that they have, and bend it back into the story and reincorporate it, or as the plot facilitator, you can say, you know what, so you remember this, but you noticed that guy, he wasn't wearing any sort of dragon motif type of stuff. He certainly didn't have a dragon mask, and his armor didn't have any of the typical dragon, decorations attached to it. There was no ornamentation that it indicated that he was a member of the Cult of the Dragon. So if he is in league with the Cult of the Dragon, he's either some sort of subcontractor, unaffiliated, who's doing work for them, and you don't know that the Cult of the Dragon really farms stuff out, or he's deep undercover. But the other alternative is he's just not part of the Cult of the Dragon. So at that point, you've kind of like laid out, okay, if they misinterpreted that this dude was an agent of the Cult of the Dragon, they can now act on one of those three things, you know? Either he's somehow affiliated, but not showing his colors, he's an undercover spy, or he's just not a Cult of the Dragon dude. So that's another part of this whole meta session of where do you guys think we're at and where do you think we're going? And I think it's a valuable conversation to have because sometimes you throw people into a role-playing scene and they don't know where it's going or why you're having the conversation, and they can either check out or they can like try and take this thing in a dramatically different direction that that you did not anticipate, or more likely, what was the thought? Just went out of my head for a minute. More likely, they're going to sit there and wonder what's going on until finally you hit them over the head with the RPG clue bat, and they go, "Oh, okay, all right, we get it. We're supposed to go to Tribal War. All right, got it. We got it." Like, you could have just told us. like they don't necessarily, they won't respond well if they're not picking up on the hints that you're dropping until finally you have to drop such obvious hints that they feel stupid, right? So that's the other reason to consider having this as a meta conversation, as an out of game, out of character, not out of game, but an out of character conversation about what do you know right now and what do you intend to do with this information. All right, so what do I think is going to happen? I'm going to talk about this for probably maybe 5 more minutes, and then we're going to move on. What do I think is going to happen? I think they're probably going to bring up that they're planning to go to Tribal War. I think Jorgen will accompany them at least part of the way, and I think either Morak is going to give them some contraband goods to take up there, or see, this is where geography plays a role that you guys may not necessarily be aware of, but given where Nightstone is in relation to the rest of the map, it's actually like a little J-hook down from Waterdeep, and then straight north from Waterdeep is essentially Tribal War, right? So they're going to have to go through Waterdeep anyhow. So we have the opportunity to go back and role play a thing that did not happen in our initial session, which is interactions with Charlton Helmstar, who's this like big wiggity wig, Zentrum fence dude, who ostensibly hired them. So we have an opportunity for a scene at Helmstar's warehouse so Morak may say, "Hey, good job. Give this to Charlton and tell him you're a member of the party," or whatever. Basically, like, you've been given my blessing, you've passed the test, you've paid your dues to the initiation in the Black Network. Welcome to the club. And then Charlton may give them an assignment like, "Okay, if you're planning to go to Tribal War, I like this idea. By the way, take this and this and this up there and hand it over to so and so, who's going to have more things for you, more jobs for you to do." It's time for a refreshment break, everyone. That's delicious. So that's something that I need to plan on. Is if they go to Waterdeep, my only concern about going to Waterdeep is such a big city. I don't know that I can paint it in the detail that I want, because I want the session to be short and move on to Tribal War right away. I don't want the session to be short, but I want this wrap up of Nightstone. I feel like we're done. Let's get out of Chapter 1 and get moving and get our teeth into the real inciting events of the greater story, as opposed to kind of the tease. I feel like Nightstone was supposed to be sort of the tease. In my opinion, it feels more like a landmark, like boom, something big happened. But obviously, in chapter 2, it gets bigger, right, with the giant assault, wherever that may take place. So the one concern that I have about going to Waterdeep is I don't know that I can give it the detail that it deserves because it's such a big, bustling urban city. I really feel like it is the landmark urban center of the Forgotten Realms, and to just go, oh yeah, and then you go through Waterdeep isn't paying it the credit it deserves. Secondly, I'm a little concerned that they're going to go to Waterdeep and go, all right, let's go on a shopping spree, and I go here, and I'm going to go to, and I want to go to the Great Library and check out this out, and can we find anybody who could, and that's the big issue with going to, like, the capital city, is when they go, hey, is there anybody who knows how to blank? The answer is always, yes, you're in the capital city. There's always somebody who knows how to blank. The question is, how quickly can they get it done for you? And how much money is it going to cost? Those are your only real factors, right? So that's a big issue for me. Is you go to an urban center like that, and they suddenly start bring up all these kind of like, I want to spend gold kind of side quest ideas that do not keep the story moving forward. Beast Be Care says, if you have 3 members of the party as Harpers, do you think that they're going to want to relay Zent info to Harpers while they're in Waterdeep? Possibility. I think that would be a great little mini scene. I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think this would be a good time for them to have a little check-in, or to have that like kind of like brief, fleeting. That's redundant. To have that fleeting meeting in a tavern someplace where a Harper comes in and says, and just, stands next to one of the other Harpers at the bar and is like, you're doing good work. And he grabs his drink and he walks away. And that's it. Like, just to give them that little kind of like cherry on the top of their ice cream of like, just keep on keeping on without turning it into a giant scene and having them discuss stuff back and forth, and especially not having the players recount experiences of a plot that you guys have all played through, right? Like, always be careful of having the players recap info to an NPC that you as the DM already knows. It can feel a little pointless. Sometimes it's important to do that. Sometimes you need to you need to find out how accurately they can convey certain pieces of information, so that when the general is making his battle plans, you can convey that accurately. But a lot of times a scene like that feels like you're punishing the players for not taking notes. And at the end of the day, it's just Dungeons and Dragons, and if they don't want to take notes, who cares? It's you can hand wave it and say, give me an intelligence check. Great, you got a 16, you remember most of it, you pass on the information that you need to pass on, cut to blah blah blah. So that's the tricky thing about those types of scenes, where the players are telling you something that everybody at the table already knows. You're going to tune out the 3 other players who are like, I don't care. I didn't. There's definitely 3 players who did not pay attention and did not write it down. So why role play the recap if it's not going to be a fun play experience for people at the table? And in the end, it doesn't matter significantly. You come back and sting them with, you forgot to mention that you killed a treant. All right, boom, you got us. Yeah, I forgot to say it. Oh, great. So that's all I have to say about that. I think we're going to stop at Nightstone. In terms of encounters that I owe the rest of chapter 1, since I substituted the dragon and dwarven raiders encounter with the poisoner's lair, that's taken off the table. Who cares whether they meet Zephyros or not. Like, I've decided that that's not going to happen, so that's fine. So the only other encounter that I owe is this Howling Hatred cultists, descend on their aerial mounts and attack. And so I need to think about, like, maybe they do that. Maybe the Howling Hatred cultists see Jorgen with the party, and they have decided that they're going to try and take a Cloud Giant captive. Even better, maybe someone has passed the word that Jorgen has gotten free, and they've put a bounty out, and the Howling Hatred has decided that they're going to pick up the bounty on Jorgen. So I think we can have that combat encounter, and then let's get to Tribal War, and let's take a look around at let's get to know the village, because the next thing that I want to tackle in my game is I want them to get to know and to care about Tribal War. The way that the Chapter 2 works, and we'll probably talk about this next week, is it feels like you get there and the giants attack, and I feel like I could care less about this village when I've just gotten there. If I go there and I do some odd jobs for the local underground dude, and have to go around the village and get to know some people, and maybe actually get to care about running some sleazy scams on them or whatever, then when the giant attack happens, it occurs, it has a little more urgency or whatever. So essentially I'm kind of pushing some of the side quests up front so that the impact of the giant assault is felt more deeply. Alright, that was almost 10 minutes on that. That means it's time to move on. I can't remember if I can go 5 minutes over, but at any rate, let's move on to talk about our map props. So while you guys were away, while I was away, really, while I didn't have my computer on and streaming, I want to show you a couple things. Let's start with the origin of all of this. So for those of you who are not following me at Dungeon Bastard on Twitter, you may not be aware that I bought the Super Mega Faerun map pack from Mike Schley. So I believe if you go to schley.com, you can you'll find that his downloadable map of Faerun, and he's done an enormous map of Faerun. I mean, it is huge. Like, I think just the JPEG is like 20 megs or something like that. It's it's at a printable resolution. It also comes in a tiled PDF. It is gigantic. It is also the source maps that they are using for all of the current D&D Forgotten Realms geographical stuff. So if you want to essentially have those resources at your disposal. Now, I will say, like, he did them at a point that was frozen in time. So I think he did this for the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, so stuff that was mentioned in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide is labeled on the map, but stuff that has been added in since, so for instance, all of the Sword Coast stuff, like basically Chris Perkins added in detail from a previous published WotC stuff from previous editions, went through, put the towns back on the map, added in a little blurb about each one, and they went through and had them relabeled. Those updated things in Storm King's Thunder aren't necessarily on these maps, but the geography is exactly the same. So you can look in the book and go, oh, okay, it's right off of this river. It's right here. Boom. You can put the dot on yourself, either with Photoshop or whatever you want, however you want to do it. Point being, I took a small section of the ginormous JPEG, and I created this. This is 13 by 9, and this is essentially most of the Sword Coast map, right? It's 13 by 9. Its color, it was $1, which is, number one, terrifically, like, it's a terrific bargain, and number two means I don't care about destroying this thing, right? So I got 4 copies for $4. It's let me just find the link, because I want to share the link with everybody. So let me pull this up in my browser quick. Nope. All right, that's not right. Mike Schley. Yeah, so his online store, right. So if you go to prints.mikeschley.com, and I'm going to drop this in the chat right now. If you go to prints.mikeschley.com, you can find the giant, let me see if I can find just that particular map. I'm not going to waste my time looking for this link. I'm sorry, you guys. You will be able to find it, or I will put it either in the comments or on Twitter. But I don't want to eat too much of your time of you watching me stare at my computer any more than I already do. So, Sword Coast maps. Maybe I might lie and just do it anyhow, right? Hang on. Map downloads. Storm King's Thunder. Yeah, so here it is. It's part of a bundle, but you can also just buy the individual one, right? So that is the giant. Oh, so let me be clear about something. I took my file to a copy shop and had the copy shop do it. But $10 for the whole map was a great deal. And it comes with PDFs. So if you want to print it off at home, print off your own pages. It comes with a tiled PDF of the entire thing, and the PDF is huge. Like, he's got a lot of fantastic detail in this thing. That's nice. I mean, it's a really beautiful thing. I like his work. I'm a big fan. I like maps in general, as has been well established. So I printed off 4 copies of this thing at my local copy shop, and now I've got these color copies that, in my opinion, are like 100% destructible. If I have to replace one, it's $1. I had 4 made. I only really needed 2 or 3. So I have one that if I want to fold it up, I can fold it up and bring it along. Great, if I really chose. That was a little boring to me, but I did a couple things. First of all, if you guys recall, I purchased very recently the mini HammerDog mini DM screen, right? So we talked about this. If we take a look inside, you'll see I've got like condition summary. Hopefully that will get into focus. Condition summary is inside. I have my XP tables inside. The nice thing about this is it's only yay big, right? It's the size, essentially a little bit larger than an index card. Well, the other side of this was blank. I wanted to do something with it. I wanted to decorate it. I thought about putting some art on the front side for the players to look at, and then I realized that it would be much handier if I cut one of these destructible maps apart and I made it the front of the DM screen, right? So now they have a miniature reference map. Now I couldn't get all of the important parts of this map on here because obviously this is only 6 by whatever and this is 13, so I had like half the map I had to ditch. So I had to make some informed decisions about where I was going to what area I was going to focus on. That's alright. The only other thing that's a little weird is I did not account for the gaps in the seams here. So if you look closely, you'll see that sometimes the roads don't quite match up because there's that, you know, half-inch, quarter-inch gap in between. Like if the road curves, it looks weird, right? It's not a big enough difference that it's going to matter. So if you have one of these customizable DM screen from HammerDog, this is a great way to just make this a valuable and usable prop. I will say I did a little trick on here. I would love to show you, but I've already done the inserts and we don't have a ton of time. But what I essentially did when I cut each of these individual panels out, each individual panel on the back side, I put an index card. I put an index card towards the bottom on the back side, and I taped it there. And then I took a bread knife and used that as sort of like a point that I could use to kind of push on and slide the whole thing as if it was a V, because I was trying to shove the thing in, and this vinyl material is it's not very tacky, but it has just enough tack that when you get about 3/4 of the way in, the friction exceeds the amount of force that you can apply to the paper, and the paper just starts to bend. So instead, what I did was I made what ends up being like a little pocket so that I could shove the bread knife in between there and it pushed the whole thing forward, right? So just a little piece of tape and it pulls it out. The other trick that I want to show you with this hammer dog thing, because it's tricky to get these things out, for the stats, so I've got pre-stats here, for the stats that I'm planning to swap out on a regular basis, I put a little tape tab and then I can just pull it up, right? So that's not super tricky to get in there, but I put a little tape tab on the top and then I can just grab it and yank it out. So that's one thing I did with my map handout, and I still have, I still have the bottom half. If I need to get out the bottom half of the map, I saved that. I might fold that up and put that, in my DM's kit. But here's the other thing that I did. I decided, this would be, I want to give this as, I want this to have, this is a little boring, and also it's so huge that I'm really going to deface this thing, like if I fold it up or whatever. Like, I'm not, it's a little too nice to just fold up and crumple up, even though I just talked for 10 minutes about how destructible the thing is. I do want to, I wanted it to be something that like stays nice and looks nice at the table or whatever. I've had friends like laminate them or what have you, and I feel like it then gets a little bulky and it gets a little difficult to put in your pack and transport around. So I tried to come up with an alternate solution, and here is my alternate solution. I took a couple dowels, I bought some fancy backing paper, and I made a map scroll. Okay? So laminate something. So you essentially you put it in a vinyl pouch and then you heat seal it, and then you can write on it with a Sharpie or with some sort of dry erase or water-based marker or something like that if you really wanted to like highlight a route or whatever. So I made a scroll. Oh boy, which side is the top side? I don't know. I got it upside down. But point being, now ta-da! So the great thing about this is now it is wrinkled. I do like. I'm okay with the idea that it's wrinkled. It has a nice weathered quality to it. This was not particularly expensive to do, and I taped the dowel onto the paper. I used some spray adhesive to adhere the map to this larger sheet of. I went to a paper store and bought a nice piece of heavy but flexible paper. I went to Paper Source. I don't know if you've got one in your town. I mean, honestly, you could use like a piece of wallpaper or something like that if you really chose. I just wanted something that had kind of a nice pattern on the back so it looked special, but whatever. But there's two things about this. One is it's very portable, right? So I roll this thing back up, and now it is something that I can basically put in my bag or stuff in the top of my bag, and I don't have to worry about it getting like wrinkled, bent, dented, blah blah blah, because it already is rolled up, but it's already wrinkled, bent, dented. Like it's weathered, it's got its feel, but it's very compact. It's not this thing that's like this big around. It's that doesn't look any different, does it? If I roll it up tighter, it's just these two dowels, right? Is essentially the point. And then secondly, it looks like a prop. It looks like something that you could go to a Sage and get, and it has that kind of because this is something we're going to be referring to over and over and over again. Where are we got to go next? Where's this thing located? What town is he in? Blah, 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 blah. Like, buckle in, guys, because the next 4 chapters are all about, like, let's go roaming the Sword Coast on a wild adventure full of magic and mystery. So, if that's the case, then I want to make sure that the map plays a starring role in what's going on. So, it was, by the time I got my claws into it, it was about $15 if you include the $10 for the map. I just secure it with a couple of rubber bands, and it goes in my bag, and it's pretty cool. If I need to make another one, it's not difficult to do, but I think it's going to be a nice centerpiece prop for this game that we're going to be rolling out and looking at on a regular basis, and it has a little more meaning than just having this thing folded up and thrown it on the table and go, oh, what do you guys want to do? Also, it's not taking up table space as like a play mat. Like if you got it laminated and you put it out on the table every time, that's fine, but it gets a little visually busy, and transporting it gets a little weird because when it's laminated, it's so stiff. So this is my it's not a compromise. This is my alternative. So that's a map handout. Maybe if there's interest, I could maybe go through step by step what I ended up doing. It's not particularly complicated. I think you guys can figure it out. I will say be careful with the glue that you choose to use. If you just like glop on a bunch of Elmer's glue on the back of this paper, it's going to bubble and warp and look weird in a way that is not weathered. So I would suggest you get yourself a can of spray adhesive, like preferably the stronger the better. I used basically, I think it was some 3M like heavy duty spray adhesive. Use it outside. Do not spray this stuff in your apartment. It will, number one, get on stuff that you don't want it to get on, and number two, it will get you high. So, not in a good way. Inhalants burn brain cells like nobody's business, everybody. Don't huff things. That is not the voice of experience speaking. That is the voice of my 9th grade health class speaking. So, that's, yeah, you just spray it on, and then attaching the dowels, like, you can figure it, like, honestly, those dowels are attached with packing tape. I could have put more work into it, making it look fancier, but that, I didn't want to sink that kind of time into it. You gotta kind of, not everything needs to look like it's ready to be used in a movie, right? So, my other alternative, which you might consider, is either having a vinyl banner printed for like $12, or trying to find someplace that will do a canvas print that's unmounted, and having that done. So, those are probably cheaper, easier alternatives than going through all of this kind of craft kind of work. Those are definitely things that I considered, and I would suggest. I wasn't happy with the options that I did with a quick online search, so I would just like, screw it, I'm doing it myself. It'll make a fun project. It'll look cool. I like the idea for this thing, so I just went ahead and made it. So that's our gaming handouts. So everybody, that brings us to the end of another session of Disorganized Play. We covered a lot of different ground today. Remember, Thursday is going to be our recap. We'll find out, did they stop in Waterdeep and cause a car wreck in terms of riding the plot train? Did my prep go at all like we discussed today? We didn't really discuss it in detail, but I think you have a pretty good idea of where things are going. So let's find out on Thursday at 4 o'clock Pacific how things actually turn out. Also, I will be taking more of your questions and tackling them here on the stream. If you have sort of general questions about your game, I'm happy to address those. If you have specific questions about Storm King's Thunder, that's ideally what I'm looking for. But if you just want to talk gaming and pick my brain about something, I'm not shy about sharing my opinion. It's not always right, but is 100% mine. So there you go. Thank you for joining me. What's on deck for the rest of the week? Let's just take a quick look. Tonight we have something very special for you guys. It is the brand new, the premiere episode of the new Shadowrun show that Tyler Rhodes is DMing. I don't remember exactly what the player lineup is, but that starts tonight at 8 o'clock Pacific. I know that we have had a lot of demand for people to either learn or play, watch an actual play of Shadowrun, and Tyler has put on his cyber glasses and is going to take it away for that. So that's fun. Tomorrow night is Misadventures. That is our all-ladies game of Pathfinder. It's a modded version of Pathfinder, but it takes place in the Harry Potter universe. I'm really excited about this show. I'm so glad that we could get it to come together. If you missed the initial episode 2 weeks ago, you can always catch that on the YouTubes. We're up to 10,000 YouTube subscribers now. Please tell your friends and neighbors, because the more subs that we can get, of course, the better it is for everyone here. Thursday, I'm back at 4 o'clock. Friday is Never Tell Me the Odds, our Fantasy Flight Star Wars Edge of the Empire game. Saturday is Dungeon World, Dark Sun Dungeon World with Mr. Sean Graham, and also Phoenix Dawn Command. And finally, Maximum Miniatures is coming back with a Halloween special. If you have not tuned in to Maximum Miniatures, I believe that's our painting show with Iron Tusk, and Iron Tusk is just incredibly talented. I actually have some minis that I need to send over and get painted. Please tune into that. If you are in the local Los Angeles area, and you're going to be attending LA Comic-Con downtown this weekend, I will be performing let me clarify, it is not my idea. I will be performing in Dungeons & Dragons, the improvised campaign with the Bearded Men West. We'll be doing a live show at 3:15 on Saturday at LA Comic-Con down at the Convention Center. I will be DMing, and the very talented Beards will be both the heroes of the adventure and my various NPCs. So keep that in mind. That I'm looking forward to. That you don't often get to see our show live. You will be able to see it on Geek and Sundry if you tuned in Monday. Thank you for joining us. That was a fun session too. So next week, Thursday, I leave for Madison, Wisconsin, because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I will be appearing as the Dungeon Bastard. Bill Cavalier himself will be at Gamehole Con once again. It's going to be a fantastic time. I'm running Monday Night Dungeon Fight there. I think those slots are sold out. I will be doing a couple other events, including Cutthroat Dungeon, which is my Cutthroat Kitchen mashup with D&D for charity. It is a Dungeons & Dragons game show to determine who is the best at Dungeons & Dragons for charity. So that's fun. I'm also doing a homebrew war game style called Super Mega Dungeon Ultra Chaos Apocalypse. So if you are in the Madison area, near the Madison area, if you've not registered, there's probably still time, but I will be there next week. So next Thursday, a week from this Thursday, I will not be doing my recap show. I will be on a plane. But if you're in the area, Gamehole Con has a great kind of like blend of old school and new school feel to it. There's kind of this throwback element where Frank Metzer, and I don't know if Ernie Gygax is going to be there, but I believe Ed Greenwood is going to be there. Like people from the pantheon of Dungeons & Dragons, also new school type of influence where Chris Perkins and I think Mike Morales is going to be there, along with people like Monty Cook and Shauna Germain from Monty Cook Games, etc. So it's just, they've got a fantastic lineup. I've been at the con since the year that it started, and the people who organized this really put their heart and their soul into it, into making this the best small local gaming con that they can make it. And they've got about, I believe, about 2,000 people attending. So it's not going to be, 5 guys in a room at a Radisson, but it has a big con feel to it without being overwhelming like a big con. It's still like, one of my fondest memories is at 11:30 at night, I just wandered up to where my 4 friends from high school were sitting around playing a game of AD&D with Frank Metzer, and I got to sit right on the whole thing, and it just brought back some wonderful memories from me. it's a terrific con. I really can't say enough good things about it. I've enjoyed attending, and I don't just plug it because they bring me out to the show every year. These are guys who grew up with Dungeons and Dragons, care about the game and care about the community, and try and put on the best show that they can. And so far, they've been doing a really good job of it. All right, that's my plugs. That's my life. Thank you again so much for joining me. And until next time, let's dungeon.